Hello, and welcome to this special edition of the DuckTV Sports podcast, also DuckTV Esports. It's a crossover podcast. We've got members from both DuckTV Esports and DuckTV Sports here, almost doing an emergency podcast of sorts, or maybe a special topic that really relates to both of us, talking about the new college football video game that EA Sports has announced it is working on. We're all here excited to talk about it. We're all fans of this series. We want to jump into it. I'm here. My name is Michael Strite. I'm here with Billy Spotz from DuckTV Sports and Sports, as well as Patrick McMahon and Sebastian Diaz, both of DuckTV Sports. So I don't want to waste any time. We're going to get into it, and we're going to start with the context. NCAA football was an EA Sports video game franchise. They had many different versions year after year, much like Madden and other sports games. Every year they would come out with a new one. Very popular. And I believe the last one was 15 or 16, or was it 14?
14.
14, wow. So NCAA football 14 is the last one that they made. And then there was a lawsuit regarding the player image and likeness that EA Sports was profiting off of the players without paying them, and that the players couldn't get paid, and all that stuff came into it. The way that the NCAA games were made was that if Lamar Jackson was a Heisman and he was in the game, when you went into the game and played as the Louisville Cardinals, they would have quarterback number 8 as the best player on the team. He would have a great rating. And then there would be community rosters that you would download that would just do the work of filling in all the player names for you. But it was in every way you could play with the players, except for the fact that their names weren't on there. But in every other way, all the way down to their number, you knew who they were talking about. So that led to the cancellation. Everyone was very upset about that. Everyone wanted to keep playing. And what happened is it spawned a crazy community of NCAA football fans that would fire up their Xbox 360s. They would keep playing the old games. There was year after year community roster updates that would bring new rosters, new teams entirely into the game. I mean, they really took NCAA football 14 and kept it alive year after year because there was nothing else. And now we have EA Sports on February 2nd. So a long time ago now, by the time you'll be watching this, but still in the month of February, EA Sports college football, and just the announcement that college football is coming back. We know nothing about where they are in the development cycle of this video game, but we can assume that they're at the beginning of the development. That's still a little bit away before we'll be playing this video game, but 146,000 retweets and 224,000 likes on this tweet. And all it was doing is saying, that this is coming. And the EA Sports College Football Twitter account already has 166,000 followers, and they haven't tweeted anything. It really is incredible how much people want this game. And that's why we're here to talk about it. And the first thing we're going to dive into is the reason that this game hasn't existed and the reason that this game is now coming back, which is the changing landscape of the NCAA and the player image likenesses and all that stuff, and what could hold in the future of, college players getting paid, college players being allowed to sell their rights. And it's a lot of murky water and question marks. So we'll dive into it. But I think the right thing to ask is, what questions are on your minds regarding the way that the players and teams are going to be represented in this game? What were the first things that popped into your head about what the legality is, I guess, of everything that's going down?
So a concern I have, not concern, I guess just question as you stated, but one of the things that really kind of popped in my mind is of course you're going to have the Trevor Lawrences and the, Tua Tagovailoa and, there's high profile college players. They're going to be the ones who probably end up benefiting the most from this move. It's a move I'm a fan of, just because I like seeing people get compensated for what they put out there. And I think it'd be nice to see college players earn money from that. But that's a can of worms that once it's opened, it doesn't go back. But I was more concerned about the lesser known players, the walk-ons, or the the 2 and 3 stars who end up at big name universities. Like, I'm curious how EA is planning on handling that if they really are kind of diving headfirst into really kind of accommodating this potential college football likeness selling that you were talking about.
No, yeah, I think to kind of add to that, I think another interesting thing would be, say, all the players, they kind of determine an amount. It would be weird to see if it's the same amount for everybody on each team, or if it's like higher for players who are better, and if that creates disputes within a team. It's just, I think, like Billy said, it just kind of opens up a whole realm of possibilities and a can of worms, and it's just, there's so many things that could go maybe not wrong, but could happen if they just make one small move, like let's pay everybody the same, or let's pay everybody based on their stats. So I think it'd be very interesting to see, and it's a question that I have is, will every player kind of, how will each player be compensated if that's the route they go?
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. Like, obviously, with Madden, EA works with the NFLPA, the Player Association. So they support the Player Association. They get all the name rights and everything, and it's very easy to do. But now for the college football game, there isn't a Player Association for college football players. So like, how are they gonna really approach this? Do they have to go up to every single player, like one by one interview, telling them what's the compensation going to be, what's the likelihood what they would, like, the amount of money they receive, and all that? So like, I can understand why it took so long, but to say like they're making this announcement already, I feel like they have a plan intact to talk, like make this a very quick like way to talk to all the players. But I think like the announcement, they want to make it out there just to get people excited. But I still can't see this game coming out to like another year or two.
Yeah, the important thing about this is that the 2014 and previous versions of the games were NC2A football. They just went and paid money to the NCAA to use that logo. And through that, I believe they were able to get access to every team that's in the FBS. So they had the logos and they had everything they needed from every college football team just by paying the NCAA. And I think the fact that the NCAA was sort of the broker there also caused some legal issues that led to it not existing anymore. But one of the great fun parts of the old games that we're going to get into later is that the jerseys were accurate. I mean, it wasn't just like every team has like 1 or 2 jerseys. If you went and played this University of Oregon, they would have 12 jerseys, right? And they would have very accurate alternates and old jerseys, and it was incredible. And that was one of the strong parts of the game, was that it wasn't just like you're playing college football in an imaginary world. You are playing as all these schools. You can play as any school you want. And I believe an important thing about this announcement is that they are now EA Sports College Football. They aren't aligning themselves with the NCAA. And I believe there was a rumor surrounding that what they would do is they're going to go to each team and each conference individually, that they're going to pay Oregon a certain amount of money. They're going to pay California a certain amount of money. And their plan isn't to talk to the NCAA and just buy all the teams. They're going to go to every single college football team. And probably it's pretty crazy to imagine that they would have to negotiate with every single FBS team for this stuff, but maybe that is what they're doing. And certainly it is a very interesting leverage situation if you're a team like California, because you want to get compensated for this in some way, but at the same time, you don't want to negotiate so hard to the point where they're like, oh, we're going to have 11 of the 12 Pac-12 schools in this game, and then we're just going to make up a fake team for Cal, and everyone will be, really embarrassed about that, right? So you absolutely want your school to be in this game, so it creates a weird position of leverage. And so there's that whole players aspect that you guys have talked about, and then there's the entire teams aspect of how they're going to get these logos and these rosters, and then whether the teams can then represent the players. Because in the NFL and NBA, and for those video games, there is a players union, and that players union can just sort of sell all their players' rights all in one blow. But now you have all these players not affiliated under anything. So maybe they're going to somehow be able to get all of the Oregon player likenesses through the university as well. Again, I agree with y'all that maybe they know something that we don't, and they wouldn't have announced this if they didn't have a concrete plan for how we're going to make this happen.
And like in the last year, there's been like all this conversation about likeness selling. Like I can't remember who, it may have been an Oregon State player. There was the guy who had the YouTube channel that the NCAA really kind of clamped down on. And so in general, I think from the stuff I've seen, it seems like the NCAA is moving away from that, and they're letting players kind of move towards selling their own likeness. And so my hope is that it's a messy situation, just because like these schools and these athletes, like it ends up getting so big that I feel like trying to approach them individually might just be out of the realm of possibility. But again, like I think they know something that isn't available to the public just yet, because this was like a huge hurdle to even get the series back on its feet. And now that they've announced it and they're like, hey, this is coming, it's like there's clearly some information there that we're not privy to just yet. But it makes me excited because hopefully kind of the power dynamics within the NCAA are starting to shift more in favor of the players potentially. So I don't know. I'm excited to have NCAA back, or not NCAA back, but like college football. I'm excited to finally be able to play a college football game again for the first time in like, I don't know exactly when it's supposed to come out, but in like for the first time in like 8 years. It'll be really fun to like potentially build those like random schools into dynasties again. Like I used to always build like Akron, I think, into a dynasty because that was fun, and then like schools from like my hometown and everything. So yeah.
No, yeah, I think you make a great point, because they obviously have to know something, because if they just announced this and didn't do anything and just failed at getting the likenesses for anything and just made some terrible knockoff game with no likenesses or like no school likenesses or anything, it would just be terrible for EA, because EA, their Madden franchise does not really get a lot of great buzz, which I'm sure we'll dive into later. But so that wouldn't really add on to their success or their how they're portrayed. But I mean, yeah, I'm so excited for this game to come back. I mean, I know we'll get into that later, but I do have a copy of NCAA 14 that I play a lot in my room, and I love building up the Rices of the world and making like a 300-pound wide receiver who starts in high school and builds all the way up to winning the Bolitnikov of the wide receiver award that I can't pronounce the name of. But I think they definitely know something that we don't.
Yeah, I kind of like agree with you guys too. Like, I feel like the fact that they're naming it like college football for NCAA football, they kind of have some implications that there are going to be complications with some colleges getting their team on the game. So I feel like that's why they went that route to make the announcement, like college football. So I think they're aware, like, there's going to be some things that aren't the same from the old NCAA football games, but they still like know the fans really want this game. They've been waiting for so long. Many of us still have the NCAA 14 game. Like, it's just something that had to happen. And I feel like EA, like, there was a lot of talk. People are like, oh, but it's still EA making the game, because EA gets a lot of like negative criticism for their Madden games because they haven't been up to par. I feel like EA had to make this announcement because they know the Madden franchise has been taking a hit, so they got to do something else to keep the fans in it.
Yeah, and so I'm reading about this right now. I was curious about what they've released so far in terms of this whole licensing thing. And according to this one article I'm reading, they are teaming up with this company called the Collegiate Licensing Company, that they're sort of like a business that works with brands to license, teams, logos, stadiums, etc. And they're going to get access through this company and through paying for it to get, the logos, the stadiums, the uniforms, everything they need for an entire slate of FBS. So they're going to get all the, right now it looks like they're going to get all the teams that you need to have the entire Division I college football represented, and probably all the bowl games and such. And then the question about players is, right now, if they were releasing this game today, they still couldn't do what they did in 2014, where Lamar Jackson would just be quarterback number 8, and it was obvious that he was the best player on the team. They would still get in legal trouble for that, because they are very much profiting off of Lamar Jackson, for example, and he isn't getting paid for it at all. So you have this issue, and what they're thinking right now is that they're going to have generic players. So there's going to be no way to tell that this player is this person. There's going to be no way to tie it in. Maybe if a Heisman winning quarterback was at LSU, for example, LSU's best player on the team would be their quarterback. Maybe they would be able to get away with that, but that person would have to have a generic name and be from some random town and stuff like that. I think that's what they're going for at the moment, because I don't think there's a way they can even pretend that those are the real players and the real life people without an avenue to somehow kick money towards the players. But the good news is that hopefully they do open the door to community rosters, which is the reason that NCAA 14 has been alive. And it's one of the best features of that old game, is that somebody can then create an entire roster that is accurate, up to date, has the actual players, has everything correct, and then you just download that and plug it into your game, and boom, it's like you have everything you could want. That is something that also maybe has some legal issues for EA Sports. Maybe, I don't know how that works, because it's tricky, because they're not outright endorsing that, but they are opening the door for somebody else to do it. And would that still be their fault? And whether, could that stop them from even having this community feature that is in there? So there's that part of it too. But it seems like they're going to get the team squared away, and the players is a big question mark.
I think I don't have Madden 21, just because I've been very disillusioned by Madden over the years. But I remember Madden 20, they still had the community roster feature, and a lot of those ended up having like future draft classes. You could also do like legacy classes, which are always really fun. And I always think that's like a concept that's really fun to play with, where like you go through the history of a team. And I think this would be really fun in like NCAA in particular, or just like college football, is like you go through and you get like the best roster possible, right? So like with Oregon, you'd have like Penei Sewell playing with Mariota or Herbert, depending on like how you want to go there. And just like, having Kenny Wheaton on the same defense with Kayvon Thibodeau and Javon Holland and stuff like that, right? So I can't see a reason why the community side of thing wouldn't happen, or the community side of things wouldn't happen, just because I don't think it's something they regulate now. I don't think it's something EA has really kind of gone out of their way to curb currently. And so I think it's very possible that it'll still make an appearance in this college football franchise down the line.
Yeah, I think the community feature is an excellent idea to get the players actually in the game, because I like on NBA 2K, you can put college rosters in the game and just play as college teams. And there doesn't seem to be a way that 2K can really get in trouble for that or anything like that. So I think that is a great route to go down. And then another question I would kind of have is in NCAA 14, they have like a Heisman challenge mode where you can play as like past Heisman winners and like go through their career and stuff. And it'd be kind of intriguing to see how they go about getting former college players' likenesses, because I feel like that'd be much easier, but it'd also be probably very time consuming. I mean, it sounds like this, if they want to get the likenesses, it's already going to be very time consuming, but it'd be interesting to see if they factor that into the game, because I think that'd be a cool feature, because I really wanted to play as Heisman winner Marcus Mariota, but I can't do that without putting him in the game myself, and it's just really sad. So I think that would be a great feature they could put in.
Yeah, that whole community thing. I think I think that will be implemented in the new college football game, because even now in Madden, like franchise game, you can play in the franchise mode, and you can like have college football players created from like the community and have them drafted into the NFL. So like the college players' names are in the games, and like Madden does not get in trouble for that now. And I know they also have a new game mode Madden introduced. It was called Face of the Franchise, and they had like an aspect where you were able to go to college as your created character, but the college teams that you played for, none of them were like actual players, had the same numbers as players. They were just like generic players, like how it seems like they're going to do for the new college football game. So I feel like when they come out with that game, they will have generic players, but they'll keep the community aspect for that. I don't think they can get like in trouble for that, but I do hope I feel like this could be a realistic option where with the NFLPA Player Association, they just have them sign off their rights for like their college teams' names and like obviously NFL team names, and then they'll get them like introduced in like the college football games. Like Herbert would be like an option to be on the 2019 Oregon football team, and like Tua Tagovailoa for the Alabama team, and etc.
Yeah, and we are going to pivot away from all that legal stuff, and let's moving forward assume that they are going to have a world of generic players that are nothing and nobody and randos, and we're going to be able to have a community option that then we can just find the right roster, plug it right in, and you can play with whatever current rosters, whatever old rosters you want. That is like an absolute ideal. So the next thing we want to talk about is the massive, massive hype train. And I've talked about the numbers, and I remember an EA Sports executive was talking about how every time he mentioned to somebody that he worked for EA, they wouldn't talk to him about anything else. They would just say, when's college football coming back? If you are on the college football subreddit, there's so many jokes about the playing NCAA 14, the new game, what you should be able to do in the new game. Like there was so many, it's like a constant churning desire for it to come back. And you saw this explosion of excitement. And I just want to talk about where this came from. I think we all have personal experience with the old games and nostalgia associated with that. And I just wanted to dive into all of your own stories about what made you love the game to make it so exciting that it's coming back. And hopefully these stories will paint a broader picture of why there's just this massive wave of people that want it back.
I guess I'll go first. I used to, I actually got it as like a hand-me-down from a cousin of mine, I think. I don't have the game anymore, sadly, because I was an idiot and was like, oh, I'm going to sell this to get some new game. But I used to love just like building out like random teams. Like I'm from New Mexico, and so I used to make dynasties out of UNM and NMSU, right? And those are teams that, or I don't even think the NMSU was actually in NCAA 14. I know UNM was. But it was just a ton of fun, like taking a team that historically, has only had like a couple great seasons, and those were like usually with like Brian Urlacher at the helm, and taking them to an Alabama level and like recruiting with like the USCs and Alabamas and Ohio States and Clemsons of the world. And it always like, it felt like a natural progression, right? You didn't like start at a school and instantly dominate. It was like, okay, I'm going to slowly build this team up. And then like usually by like year 3 or year 4, you were, it was just, it was a very satisfying experience to play NCAA 14. And it's something that Madden never really matched. And so I always, in my head, I always associated the NCAA games as a better product because it felt like there was more passion and care and attention to detail, right? Like you were mentioning like the stadiums and alternate uniforms. And it's like Madden has that to some extent, but they're always missing like 1 or 2 alternates that like hardcore fans are like, yeah, I wanted to play with those because those were like my favorite and they weren't there. So.
Oh yeah, I think one of my favorite aspects of the game is just the complete dominance of the read option, because when I was a kid, I would always play with the option. And I would try to go on Madden, and it just wasn't the same because in NCAA, I could pick any team. I could pick the worst team in the game, Georgia State. And if I could just run the read option the whole game, I could somehow hang with Stanford the entire game. And it's just obviously along with the building the team up from the bottom. And like in Madden, you can't really do that because you can't really recruit. It's just kind of like, oh, I get this draft pick, and you can just slowly kind of get a good team, like get a young quarterback and you're fine. But it's just so fun because in NCAA, the player's only there for like 3 or 4 years, and you have to keep recruiting, and you can't really just go from like 0-12 to 12-0. You have to take baby steps. And it just felt like so much more of a rewarding thing to get a really good team up from nothing in that game, because it is harder than it is in Madden, I think. Because in Madden, you can just sign free agents or whatever and get the best players. So
yeah, I was gonna say the same thing, like constantly creating your own team. Like I used to love doing that, and like obviously building them up because like in Madden they don't really have that option. And what like I really liked about the old NCAA games, it didn't feel like a game mode. It felt like its own game. It like stood out from Madden. Like it had its own fan base, and like I used to love the option too. Like when you were a college football player in the game, you had like the option to pick would you rather train, or would you rather go to school like and study for your classes? Because like it took the aspect of being a student in the game, so it really made it feel special about it. It made it feel like a college football game. And yeah, I feel like the game, like the fans had been really trying to keep it alive, like that old feeling, because in the PC Madden games now, there's mods where they can be like college teams and they have like college players and everything like that. So clearly, like fans just love the old NCAA games, and I just think it was always more popular than the original Madden games.
Yeah,
And
it is
Madden,
definitely making a lot of money for him. And Sebastian, I want to build on that. The when you're your own player, when you're going through, not only is it fun when you're at a college, but there is this weird special thrill of like choosing where you want to go to college also and getting offers from schools. And when you're playing as someone in the NFL, you're like, oh, somebody drafted me. Or maybe you can choose where you want to play, but that's it. And it's just like, okay, you're on an NFL team. But the dynasty, not the dynasty mode, but the road to glory mode is what it was called, where you are your own player. You got to play in high school games, and then you would do well in the high school games, and then you would see that these schools have now given you offers, and then you get to sit down and be like, here's the different teams that have offered me a scholarship. Where do I want to go? And that was just an amazing experience to go through that.
yeah. Somebody brought up face of the franchise. I can't remember if it was either you or if it was either Patrick or Sebastian, but face of the franchise, it felt very hollow in terms of like just everything. It felt very much like you're gonna play 3 games and then we're just gonna drop you in a franchise mode. But the one thing I did actually kind of appreciate about it was kind of choosing that recruiting at the beginning. However, I do wish it was more in depth, like the old Road to Glory game mode was, where like you play games in high school, and usually you get to kind of play that ridiculous power fantasy where you're just so much better than everyone else on the field, right? And then slowly but surely that competition increases as you get to college. And so maybe down the line, like you even get kind of crossover between this mode and Madden down the line, where you can bring that player all the way through. Because I know there used to be, maybe it was even like NCAA 14 and Madden like 25, whichever one came out that year, where like you could drop draft classes into each game. And so I hope there's that kind of carryover. But in general, like the thing I would always love about the NCAA games is that the various game modes felt so much more in depth than anything Madden had put out. Right? Like Madden, in your franchise mode, you had player modes, and then like you had, running a team, but beyond that, there wasn't a lot, right? But I think the return of college football just opens up so many more possibilities for football video games, and even really kind of sports video games, right? Like opening that door to like get back college basketball games too could be really exciting, because I've always really wanted to play through like a March Madness tournament. I think that would be incredibly fun, right? March Madness is one of my favorite times of the year, and like getting to play through like a genuine March Madness experience in a video game is something, I don't think I don't remember when the last college basketball game came out. I think it was around the same time as NCAA 14, but
sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Billy, but
no, I was wrapping up, so you're totally fine.
I actually also have the last college basketball game, which is 2K10. Blake Griffin is on the cover, so you know how old that thing is.
Okay. Yeah.
But it's another fit thing I kind of liked about the NCAA games that they hope they bring back is you can go through the coaching journey as well. Like I like to start as like an offensive coordinator, a defensive coordinator, and you just solely play like offense or defense, whichever side you pick. And I don't think you can do that in Madden. I could be wrong, but I don't think you can.
In Madden, yeah.
Yeah, it's just the NCAA game just seems to have so many more cool features that you can do instead of Madden, which I feel like it's just they put all their time into the graphics and the Ultimate Team, because the Ultimate Team gets so much money because people have to pay to get coins, and it's just kind of disappointing because the NCAA game it seemed like they put a lot of time in every mode, and it seems like they don't do that anymore with Madden.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's one of the things I love about the NCAA games. They're like they all felt like all the game modes felt like a personal experience. Like you created your own journey, you created your own success, your own everything in that game. And like Madden, it's like they control your experience in that game. You don't got any like input of what you could do. And like with NBA 2K, they had like the My Career mode very successful because like a lot of players can control like where they want to go. Now they introduced G League. They can go to college, go to the G League, and for like EA's been struggling with that. Like that's what the biggest like criticism was, that it didn't feel like a personal experience playing any of those games. In the old NCAA games, you had that like that feeling like, oh, I created this college and went up, or I created my like road to glory. I picked what college I went to, got my scholarships, and all that success you got. It was like everything you did. The game like gave you that freedom.
Not to mention that as a coach, you also had coaching offers from schools as well. So it was like, I know a lot of people would just choose the school they wanted and then they would make that school win a national championship and that's how they would roll. But you could also make this very deep personal journey for yourself where you start as an offensive coordinator at a school, then you get hired to be a head coach at a different school, then you do well and you get an offer to coach at Stanford and you're like, cool, I get to upgrade, I'm going to go be the head coach at Stanford. And you can move around and then maybe settle somewhere where you're like, this is where I want to settle, right? And there was that aspect of it too. And I think before we move on, one of my most appreciated parts was the relationships that you would build with imaginary players also. There is, in Madden, you're like, you know who Tom Brady is, you know who Cam Newton is, and you draft players and they go to free agency and whatever. There's this special thing in NCAA football where you have to recruit that player. You're clicking these buttons, you're promising things to them, you're convincing them to come, and you never know if they're actually going to choose you. And then they do choose you, right? And they are going to come to your school and you're like, yes, I got this awesome recruit. And then they come out and they're a freshman and they're good, but they're not that good yet. And you get to play with them. And then year after year, you're just playing with this guy and they keep getting better. And then you get to enjoy that senior year. And then you get that thing going where you have to say bye to players, right? They graduate, they leave your program, and you're like, oh, this legend who won this award and was so great, they're gone. They're going to the NFL now, and I have to keep this thing going. And you would just have these relationships with every player on your team. There was this personal aspect of it where you had to recruit them to come, or they transferred, and it was just so awesome. And there's like we said, there's so many reasons, and that's what we're going to touch on next is this game is coming out. We don't know how long it's going to be, but it's on its way. And I think it's time we start building a wish list of what do we want, what needs to be in this new game, what can we kindly ask EA Sports to do right. One thing that will certainly be there is Ultimate Team.
No.
We know there's going to be an NCAA football or college football Ultimate Team. Like, there's no way they won't do that. And like I said, it's gotten a bad rap because the other game modes of Madden and FIFA have suffered tremendously because of how much resources and time and effort gets put into Ultimate Team. And there's just this like, if you didn't exist, we would have the old game that was better. But on its own, Ultimate Team promises to be fun if they are able to, like you said, score those licensing deals with old players and have these like different versions and things going. And have these challenges that you can play. Like, that sounds like a blast to be able to play through historical games and challenges and whatnot. But that's going to be there. What else do you guys absolutely want and really hope to see when this game drops?
Michael, once you brought up like playing through classic games, I really want to play through the 2006 Rose Bowl now, the Texas USC game. That would be incredible. Like that's
very doable.
Yeah, no, that like, because you can reach out to all the former players and be like, hey, are you cool with us using your likeness? And if not, they can just be a generic player, whatever, right? But I think really my biggest expectations is, and I hate saying this just because kind of the precedent it would set, but if you could just give me NCAA 14 with like Madden 21 graphics.
Oh my gosh, yes.
And give me the ability to upgrade a stadium and truly edit uniforms, I would be set. That being said, you brought up Ultimate Team, and that is my biggest concern because I've seen Madden Franchise, which is what I used to put a lot of time into when I didn't have NCAA, kind of just go into the deep or, go off the deep end just because it was put on the back burner for Ultimate Team. And I think I caught Patrick's reaction as well. We were both just kind of shaking our head, both just kind of being like, Ultimate Team's kind of ruined some of our favorite sports games. And so I do have that like voice in the back of my head going, they might screw this up because they really want to nail Ultimate Team. And the best part of NCAA that's really kept it alive all these years will be, forgotten about. And my hope is that they see the passion people have for NCAA. Like NCAA YouTube content is insane. There are people who put out like 70 plus episode dynasties just because they're like, I enjoy playing this game. And so my hope is that they see that passion. They go, okay, we should give an avenue for these people. Like we should, actually make sure this game mode is set in stone, because it can be the selling point of the game. But then you can also put in Ultimate Team if you really want to, because I know that's where EA makes most of their money off these games.
No, yeah. To kind of add to that, I really wish it would just be the NCAA 14 game with the 21 graphics, because I remember I watched a YouTube video on like why Madden sucks, and it broke it down really well there, because like in 2005 there were two competing football games. Like Madden didn't just own all the rights to every NFL thing ever, and once EA secured all the rights, then they had like 80 features that they literally listed out. Like they took the time and listed each one that Madden has taken away from like the game when they had to actually make a good game. So it just bothers me that like they put so much time into Ultimate Team when it's just like, if you made a decent career mode, everybody would be happy, instead of having the storyline where it's just like 90% clips and the rest of it is I'm throwing passes at the combine until I get drafted. But I just hope they keep the career mode that they have in the old game, because it's so much better than adding all the clips and the storylines. Like that's if you like that, that's fine. But I just want to play the game. I don't want to sit through hours of clips of my player talking to some guy I have never met. And I just want them to keep the career mode somewhat similar, at least.
Yeah, for me, I really hope they introduce an aspect of like expanding the college football playoffs, because like there is some like rumble and some talk about that, like making the 18 playoff or 16-team playoff. I hope that game gives you that freedom. I just hope like it's not like Madden where they control everything. Like you have like this ability to like create your own essentially league in college football. I hope like that gets introduced. I also hope they make it cross-platform. I feel like it's making it so like, PlayStation players can play with Xbox players, and console can play with PC. That would be just awesome for the community as a whole. And like it's kind of adds on to like it's just make like they can essentially make the same old game, but like with these new like stuff they're introducing now. A lot of games like cross-platform, like I said, all that. And I even like I kind of like the cutscenes. Like I know in 2K they have like their own customized like cutscenes where you're playing and everything like that. I hope they do have like a kind of a career like back to like Road to Glory mode, like with some cool cutscenes with the next gen graphics. There's so many like options they can do with this game to make it great.
Yeah, this is I completely agree with y'all that it's like if you could just copy paste NCAA 14 and just move it over, like they did so many things right. Like we have spent this whole podcast and we keep bringing up new things that were amazing in that game. Like you just keep pulling things out of this bag that were like, this part of the game was amazing, right? They had so many features and so many little details that were fantastic. And you just gotta do your best to keep all those. Like you don't need to invent anything new, really. One thing I need to mention is that my personal favorite part of NCAA football, and the reason that it stood far above Madden when I was playing both games, was the recruiting process, because it was so deep. You had like 5-star, 4-star, 3-star recruits. Then you would have to scout them to see whether they were busts or whether they were diamonds in the rough. And you'd be able to see that this is a 3-star recruit that is actually really good, but none of the big schools are recruiting them because they didn't give them a look. So I'm going to recruit this person. And then once you decide, okay, this is a player I want on my team, there's these state pipelines, right? Being from a state that you already have a lot of players gives you a boost. There's like 10 different layers of factors that would, they use to choose between schools. You can promise them things. You can have visits with them. You can invite them to visit you during your season and like say, oh, this is our rivalry game, so I'm going to have 12 recruits come visit me for this one rivalry game. And then winning would give you a boost with those recruits and stuff like that. Like I could go on, but it was so deep that it was just magical. And I was just looking around YouTube, looking at other people playing Dynasty mode just to remind myself. And another part of it that I'm so hyped about is actually getting to play NCAA Football 14 with other human beings in those online leagues. and online seasons and getting to play as the Oregon Ducks and then play somebody else, play through an entire Pac-12 schedule against other real human beings in a league that gets set up. Stuff like that is just awesome. And I know they're going to at least get that part in there, is the ability to do these leagues where you and 11 other people from 11 schools are in a 12-person league and you got to play your matches and stuff like that. That's going to be awesome.
No, yeah, and I one thing I wanted to add that we have not even touched on is they have to put the mascot mode in there, because that mode is just so awesome. Like, I love playing that with my friends and playing as the Stanford tree, because it's really creepy, and being like, how can he catch the football? He doesn't have hands. How can he do a big hit? Does he just lower the top of the tree? It's just so fun. Like, that is a mode that has to be in the game.
Look, all I want is Benny the Beaver and Puddles to get in a fist fight. Okay, that's all I want. Just give me the ability to get that level of frustration out, and then we're good. Maybe throw in. Oh God, is it Harry the Husky?
Harry the Husky.
Yeah,
I think so. Yeah.
Gosh, you just put this image of my mind of getting to play mascot mode and like Puddles stiff arming a beaver, like literally just to do that, and then just go into replay mode and screenshot it and just have a picture of Puddles stiff arming a beaver, or like doing a DeAndre Hopkins or something over somebody.
Yeah.
Like, oh my gosh, I want that right now.
Oh, they have Puddles hold up the trophy or something like that would be awesome.
Yeah. Like there's so much potential for this game, and I'm really hoping they nail it. But it's like every other part of me is going, I'm not sure how well this can go, just, based on the history of Madden and EA's games, or like specifically their sports titles. I'm someone who tends to be like optimistic to a fault. And so I'm like, they're going to get this right because they have to. And if they don't, I don't know what I'm going to do with myself. But yeah, like there's so much potential here. And I'm so excited to see the game come out, but I'm really hoping they take their time. I'm totally cool with the game not coming out this year. I'd be totally fine with it coming out in 2022, right? Given the time to like sort all the contracts out with the teams, find a way to represent players properly, but have those, those great dynasty modes, those great coach modes, those road to glory modes, and make sure that like the overlap between Madden and NCAA is there. And I think it's the sky is the limit for this game. And I'm just hoping, like, even at like a bare bones, like I just give me NCAA 14, but remastered, please.
Yeah, I totally feel that. Like, I always have like that thought still, like it's still EA making the game. Like EA, not just with their sports titles, they have issues with other games, like the Star Wars Battlefront game, like Battlefield, all that. It's like it's always pay to win. I'm like, oh man, they might screw this one up too, like all the other games. But I feel like EA recently they know like what they did wrong with a lot of their games, and they're trying to like fix it. Like they fixed like the Battlefront game and made them a lot more like playable. And like I saw an article that they are bringing back the same people that worked on the NCAA football game, the 2014 one specifically. They're bringing them back now for this future game. So that kind of gives me a sign of hope. But end of the day, I still think like it's EA. It can go either way with them. But if they're bringing back the old crew, I can't see how this can't be like a huge like news for everyone.
No, yeah. One thing that kind of popped into my head like an hour after is like, what if the NCAA game does so well, or the college football game does so well that it just makes Madden like nobody buys it in their first year. So then EA is just like, we need to make this NCAA game or this college football game just like a copy of Madden. So then people will buy both. So I really hope they don't just come out with an awesome game and then as it goes along, just make it worse to make sure their Madden titles still get sold, because I could definitely see EA doing something like that.
Yeah, I think that the biggest thing with EA, and this is, Sebastian, exactly what you're talking about, is that it can go both ways. We know it's like there's a positive and negative that we already know. We know that they're going to have, it's going to be gorgeous. It's going to be fun either way, that they're going to do dynasty mode. They're going to do the road to glory mode. Like these things are going to be in there, and you believe that EA has a consistency with at least not being like a stinker, right? It's going to be a video game that's going to be fun to play, and they're going to have you. We already can guess what's going to be in there. But then on the other side of things, that EA is going to have, they've been struggling with lack of attention to detail, missing features left and right, and an ultimate team mode that just overshadows everything else. And we know that's going to be there too. So it's kind of just settling right in the middle of like, we know that they're going to do it right in some ways, and we know they're going to do it wrong in some places as well. And you just got to accept EA and hope that they can just do the best they can to just move, like we said, NCAA 14, just pick it up and move it over, copy paste. Like, it's not hard to do, and it's going to be extra disappointing if there's some stuff that they really should have just kept, because it's really not that hard to just figure out what you did right and do the exact same thing.
Yeah, kind of what you were talking about, Patrick, like that EA might start worrying about their Madden title. Like, that kind of made me think, like, what if they try to do something where, like, the college football game has some connections with the Madden game. So say, like, one of your players, you want to go pro, somehow there's a way to get that creative player into the Madden game or anything along those lines. I feel like, knowing EA, they might try to draw those connections, because it's kind of like impossible for them not to worry about the Madden title as well. Because, like, as soon as the college football game comes out, the Madden title is going to take a hit that year. So I feel like EA, they might do something along those lines to make some connections where they could transfer over data and all of that.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. I can't wait just to either do it myself or watch somebody else do it, where you roll through 4 years of college and then you import that player into the Madden player mode. We're going to wrap this podcast up, but before we do, we've had a great time talking about this game. We're all excited. We all want to get it as soon as we can get it. What are your final thoughts on this announcement, on this hype train, and what you want out of this video game?
I'm super optimistic, but I'm cautiously optimistic. I am hoping for the best, but I'm preparing to be let down. And I feel like that's all I can really say.
No, yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat as Billy. I just hope they can take as much time as they need to. I mean, if it takes 4 years, I might get a little worried, but take as much time as you need. Do not come out with a really rushed game that's just a Madden copy and paste, and I will be content. Just do what you need to, EA, to not make it Madden.
Yeah, I think we're on the same boat here. I'm like cautiously optimistic too. Like, I'm totally fine waiting. Take your time. Take another year. Take another 2 years. I'm okay. It's already been 7 years. Take as much time you guys need. Just like, I hope that it's just its own game. It's not just like a game mode. It's its own thing.
Yeah, absolutely. It's beautiful, and it was so popular because it was its own thing. The one thing I'm going to say before we wrap this up is that the hype train is dangerous, and we're at the very beginning of it. And as we build up to, like, oh, the game's coming out this month, this day, and here's all the things that are going to be in it, like, it gets real dangerous when you just have this crazy wave of hype, and then all of a sudden the game's in your hands and you can see exactly what they did right and what they did wrong, and you're trying to match it up with what you imagined it would be like. It's a very strange thing that happens with video games, where you want the game to be one thing in your head, and you have to accept what it is, and wrestle with that. But we'll all be hyped as soon as we can play it, and I'll be trying to get dubs over all y'all. I will be in there. I'll be active, and honestly, if they do it right, forget every other video game, bro. I'm going to just spend hours and hours in there. I'm not going to do anything else with my time. It's going to be it if they can do it right. So with that being said, thank you all for joining me. Billy, Patrick, Sebastian, and yours truly, Michael, here on this DuckTV Esports, DuckTV Sports crossover. Thank you for watching, and have a wonderful day.